I assume it's working.
Jamie, I think I did a pretty
James's microphone seems to be live now. Okay, guys, so hopefully you can hear me there. I'll minimize that. James seems to be online. James, can you hear me?
I hear you fine, but I'm trying to figure out mine. Can you hear me?
I can hear you good. Thank you very much. Welcome to the stream. What's your handle on Twitch, James?
Bindi1224.
Hey, Bindi. Great to hear it. Put a voice to the name. I have spoken to you once before in voice, I think, haven't I?
Yes.
Okay. And are you wanting to show your face physically, or would you rather stay slightly more anonymous?
Actually, I'm not able to right now, and I'm in a very, very noisy environment. I'm having to click mute me like on and off a lot.
No worries. Well, that'd be kids.
Yeah, my nieces live with me.
Yeah, well, kids and animals, hey, what can we do? Awesome. So, but you are very welcome to share your screen. So anybody who's watching this is a Meet the Mentor session for Tier 3 subscribers. And my idea is I give 20 minutes per Tier 3 subscriber. Those of you who turn up, who are in the meeting room, who are ready to go, just like James is, and help in any way I can, basically. Unity, preferably, but it could be Unreal, could be Godot, could be life lessons. Not that I'm the best person to ask about that. So, yes, James, how can I help today?
Actually, I don't know of anything that you can do to help me right now. I'm just doing the new 2D content I found that Rick just put in there.
Okay. Are you willing to share maybe some of your code or some of what you're doing, and we can have a look and see how you're getting on and what your common pitfalls are? Maybe review your code a little bit. If you're not copying it directly from what we're doing, even if you are. I suspect if you open up a project and share with us a little bit, that we will be able to see. We'll be able to spot things for you as we go as a group.
I'm actually trying to figure out how I would share the Unity screen. I'm not showing it on my share options.
Oh, okay. Well, you could share your whole screen if you're willing to, but you just need to be careful. Or you can, on your share screen options at the bottom, the Unity window, if it's open, should be there. If you're lucky. Have a play with that. Meanwhile, in the chat. Oh, there you go. Look, it's working. Wow, that's cool. We can see that. I can see that pretty clearly. In the chat, can you guys hear me, by the way? Clearly. And can you hear James clearly? Just say something, James. This looks really cool, by the way. Bryant, do you have a Zoom link? Yes, Bryant, I will give you that Zoom link in just a second. In fact, I can just tell you the Zoom meeting ID is probably the best bet, and then you can queue up with us as well. That'd be awesome. I'm just looking for the meeting ID now. Give me a second. I don't know if I can sensibly pull it up. I'll bring it up in just a second. Stand by, Bryant, to just get the Zoom meeting ID. So talk us through it, James. What do we got here? James has got background noise, so there's going to be a pause before he speaks, right? Possibly a long pause, because kids in the background always unpredictable. It's working out the audio, no problem at all. So this looks like Block Breaker from the remastered 2D course. Let's just give you guys a link to that. It looks like we're going for an aquarium theme. I'm guessing that James is a fish owner by the looks of it. Very presumptuous, but I'm guessing it could be.
Can you hear okay now?
Yeah, I hear you fine, thanks, yeah.
All right, I think I worked out where I closed it. I was using space for push to talk or something. But yeah,
oh, okay.
I just went with some assets that I was able to get online. I signed up for this asset website. But yeah, that's really all it is. It's just basic Block Breaker. I just have got it where I've got the sprites where they change whenever you hit them multiple times.
Awesome job. And is this how much Unity have you done before the course?
None. at all.
Oh, cool. So this is from 0 to this stage. And how long? How long have you been going with all of this?
With Unity, a few days, maybe a week.
Oh, is that it? Wow.
Yeah.
So you should pat yourself on the back. This is pretty, from 0 to that is pretty awesome. Even though you're just following our tutorial, you've taken the initiative to bring in your own assets, etc. You willing to share a bit of your code with us?
Sure. Give me one moment. Let me see how I would share that one.
And I'm going to try and get this meeting link for Bryant. So the URL changes each time, so I'll just paste it in the Twitch chat. So tier 3, join us here. First of you to join and be ready, and with everything working, will be the next person to go at about 25 past 6, something like that, or 25 past the hour. Cool. All right. So here's your code. So nice. I like the way you're using our this business about the different sections. Is that making sense? How we're separating out the header of the code? Is it all a bit nebulous at this stage because you're new to it? How are you feeling about the general layout of the code?
Actually, I had a direct question about that. I was wondering if you have some sort of template to break it up like this. This is actually really helpful. This is the first time I've noticed you guys like pointing it out in Rick's videos. So I was going to ask you if there's a template for it.
Yeah, I do. I've pasted it in the Twitch chat. Oh, no, I can't do that. I actually have this in a gist. Let me quickly see if I can find that gist. 2 seconds. There you go. So here's the gist that has that. I've pasted it in the Twitch chat for you. And that just, if you click on that, it just gives you that code, that layout. And so I'll just talk you through the thoughts behind this. The idea is that I'm going from typically the most exposed to the least exposed stuff. So parameters are very open and exposed. By making something serialized field, it's both public to other it's not public to other classes, but it's available to be changed in the inspector, right? So I put that type front and center, these parameters. Cached references, remember you can always go and find something like a level at the time, but we tend to do this just to make the code read easier. And then state variable should only be, this by the way, you only serialize for the debug process. Okay, I was going to say, why are you serializing the times hit for debug? Do you want me to show you a trick? If you remove serialized field from in front of that, I'll show you another way you can see that value without even needing to serialize it.
All right.
So now if you just go save that and go into Unity, I'll show you a cool trick. Perceptual lucidity is quite rightly saying that you can change the default script that Unity writes for the mono behavior. And I can find you a link that shows you how to do that as well.
All right, I'm actually, that was just copied directly from where I am in the course at the moment.
Okay, no, yeah, that's cool. So just hop into the inspector. I'm just showing you a bit of value add because we don't get to it till a little bit later.
All right.
Maybe somebody else can place this link because I can't find it at the same time without messing up what's on the screen.
Do I need to change my share so that you can see that? Is that the problem?
Yeah, you would need to, yeah. Perceptual, maybe if you don't mind, sorry to make you do the work, but share a link in the chat as to how you change that. There's a monobehavior.cs file somewhere in the guts of Windows or macOS that you can change. We could put that header into. Cool. So now, what was it you wanted to look at? The times hit on the block, right?
I believe so. That was it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what you can do here, mate, is you can look. There's a little tiny hamburger right there, just 2 little lines, and it's really hard to see at the top of the inspector. If you click on that, you'll get debug mode, and then now you'll be able to see all the private variables like that.
That was actually another question I had in Visual Studio. In Godot, whenever I'm typing inside there, it shows me the variable names and things on the left-hand side. I was wondering if Visual Studio had something like that.
Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code?
Visual Studio Community.
Okay, let's take a look. So are you looking for like a, hold on, Visual Studio Community. I'm so used to using code now. I've started using code as my preference, just because it's less bloated. Perceptual lucidity is pasted for you where those script templates are. Thank you very much. In contents, resources, script templates. I can show you that on a Mac, but I presume you're on a PC, Bindi?
I am on a PC.
Wicked. Good man. You know what the right platform to choose. So just going to open and see what you might be looking for in Visual Studio. The values of you're not going to be able to see the values of your variables inside Visual Studio on the PC without attaching the debugger to Unity, because it's really up to Unity to change those states. If you're talking about in Godot, then you probably want to be using Visual Studio Code rather than Visual Studio Community for Godot. And I'm not sure what the state of the debugger attachment is with that. So you're saying in Godot you want to know what the values of your variables are mid gameplay, right? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm sorry. Give me one moment and I'll share my screen.
Yeah, no worries. Share your whole screen if you want, but I mean, obviously just be aware of we see everything.
No, I'm doing it window by window. But like if you look in Godot, and it should update shortly, I guess. Over here, it shows all of the variables so that you can quickly get to them and check them out. I didn't know if it had I guess it's like an index of all the variables in your script.
In Visual Studio. There is something similar to that. Let me just see if I can find where it is. It's certainly not in your solution browser, but it's in one of the pads. Anybody know where that is in Visual Studio? I never use it, but I suspect you've got a debug pad or a pad that lets you do that. So, your locals, I'm surprised your locals aren't there. Somebody else help me out on the stream here. Which Visual Studio Community pad do I need to be able to see the variables as I go without attaching? I don't know if you're going to be able to do it without attaching a debugger, because ultimately the benefit you've got in Godot is that it's integrated. You're writing the code in the same environment as you're running the editor, but in Unity, in Visual Studio, you're going to have to, it's going to have to know what the game engine is doing to know what these values are. So you might get an index of your variables, but you won't be able to see their values at runtime without using the debugger. But to get an index of them, yeah, Perceptual and Bryant are both having a look as well. I'm not aware of anything, to be honest. I'll have a look in Visual Studio Code for you.
No, that's fine. I was just curious. I still have to learn to use the debugger anyway in Visual Studio.
Yeah, we rarely use it actually, because we tend to just print intermediate values if they're causing, if we want to know what they're doing. So, I think you're benefiting from the tighter integration in Godot there. Wow, I've just realized how hot it is in this room. It's crazy today. Hey guys, welcome to XBT Duke, etc. Cool, so did you have any, you said you didn't have any questions at the start, but I figured opening the code would make them stream out of you. You got any other questions about how this is all working at the moment, Bindi? Anything you look at and think, why do we do it that way, and etc.?
No, actually, the only question I had was why we were extracting so many methods, but Rick does a good job of explaining that too.
Yeah, so why are our methods so short, right?
Right.
Yeah, and what did you get from how Rick described it, just to make sure we're on the same page?
Actually, I'm not following it 100%. I'm pretty new to programming anyway, but it sounds like it's so that it's easy to track down what's affecting each individual thing to make it easier to fix. That way you can change something in one place and it won't, your errors won't cascade, I guess is the easiest way to think of it.
Yeah, okay, so let me answer a previous question and then I'll get on to this one about methods. So thank you to Bryant for pointing out the Class Explorer, which is what I was looking for. So inside Visual Studio Community, you want View, Pads, Classes, and then in there you can go down through your methods and your variables, etc., and then you can go and find references to those instances of those things. So that's what I think you're looking for. View, Class View, there you go, Class View. And now you can scroll through and see your different entities. So ball maybe, and then probably not project references. That's the only one that you probably don't want. That's going to be full of all sorts of internal stuff. But maybe ball, base types.
Yep, looks like it's there. Actually misclicked.
Shoot, if I could cheer my own channel, I would be cheering for Bryant now, in gratitude for him finding that. Hey Molly, welcome, glad to see you. Oh, looks like another Twitch partner. So nice to have you here. Do host us if what we do is relevant to you. Okay, Bindi, so the next question you had was why do we make so many methods? One simple way of saying why we have so many methods is because the code becomes self-documenting. So if you're going to put a comment that says why a particular method does something, the problem is that when you then update what that method does, there's nothing keeping you honest to updating the code. Whereas if you make the code say what it does, then you're being kept much more. There's only one place for the meaning of that method. What that method does is in the name of the method. So it's really just a question of typing less and of making sure that everything stays up to date, as well as what Rick says about the ability to inject more code as the functionality of, say, counting breakable blocks in your example gets bigger. Oh, there's one more thing. It's also about keeping the abstraction consistent. So in your code you've got on the screen there, we want to at a glance see what happens at the start. So with your current state of code, all that happens is we count breakable blocks. Now, if you want to know the details, you look down here. But if you don't want to know the details, then you're done. So as long as you name things really well, it allows you to abstract better, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. It's just, I imagine once it gets so big, like where there's several hundred lines of code or something, it would become hard to search for each individual thing.
What we want to do is make a story. So the stuff that really matters is at the top of the file. And then the stuff further down matters less unless you're interested in the very details. So the key will become that the story is told at the top of each file, and that each file doesn't become more than a few hundred lines. If it does, we start to split it out into different files, and there's lots of ways we'll see to do that later in the course. And then you never ever end up with having absolutely massive files. As Bryant says, new class at that point.
Makes sense.
So we're going to be making sure that the top of the classes really tell the story, and the bottom is just kind of literally the guts of it and tells you the details of how it's done. So you don't need to look through all of the files if they're organized properly. It's a bit like reading through the kind of index of a book. You know, you want to just be able to, or the contents of a book. You want to be able to get an overview before you need to dive down into the details.
Right, that makes a lot of sense.
If that makes sense, it'll come even clearer. If sub-month equals 2, cheer. Oh, grumpy gamer. So yeah, I think we may be in month 2 of our Twitch channel now. So I think that some people are going to have to resubscribe with Twitch Prime in order to keep our number of memberships up. So I think that's what old Grumpy Graham is saying.
I'm not sure if I can subscribe through Twitch Prime again. I think I might have to wait until the tier 3. Maybe that was over or something. I'm not seeing anything for it.
Possibly. Hey Molly, thank you very much for subscribing. That's cool. And Danbio. Oh, you're all doing your resubscribes. This is the day. So now we get to find out the oldest people, not in terms of years, but the people who've been here longest. Thank you for resubscribing. So anything else, Bindi? Any other general questions about? Are you exploring both Unity and Godot at the same time? What's going on for you?
Actually, I've stopped Godot for right now. It's hard to keep it all straight in my head whenever I'm just starting out. But I am doing the 2D and 3D course at the same time. I'm in 3D right now. I just started Argon Assault, and I go back to the 2D course whenever I see Rick has updated stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Probably a good idea. When I recommend trying multiple engines, I do recommend you kind of get into one engine first, before confusing your mind with two. So get at least one of the Unity courses finished before you dive into the next one. I would suggest that seems like a good idea. Cool. What do you hope to make in the end, Bindi? What's the end goal?
I have no idea. I would love to make an MMO. Or not an MMO, Jesus. I'm sorry. That's from the chat earlier. I'd love to make an RPG. Mm-hmm. You know, create your own world, create all the inhabitants, put it all together. Focus more on the story than anything else, but I would love to be able to put that into a game engine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. So you know about the RPG course. You're probably not quite ready for it yet. Do a bit more of these, but after a few weeks of these courses, you could start on part 1 of the RPG.
That's actually what started me on these courses. Was told to go 2D up to the new stuff, go to 3D up to raycast, and then you should be able to understand the RPG course. Is what I was told. Yeah,
good advice. Who told you that?
I don't recall. It was a lot of people all at the same time in Twitch.
Oh, cool. The community helping out again. Yeah, that seems great. Bended. Awesome. XBT Duke, thank you for subscribing. I've just, looking down at my phone, I've just added to a list of things I need to ask Twitch when I'm on the phone to them tomorrow. So one of them will be about how we can make sure that people can use Twitch Prime for the base subscription. Cool. So have you got any queries in Engine at the moment, Bindi, that we can help you with?
Actually, no. I'm pretty much everything I've come across is reasonably easy to understand. I think what I did with Godot before is helping a lot to understand what's going on now.
Awesome. That's a good testimonial for the idea that different engines can give you perspective, right? And you preferring Unity, or you preferring Godot? What's your gut feel? Where do you feel more comfortable at the moment?
I feel more comfortable in Godot, but Unity is I can do more, and right at the onset because of all the tools and I guess asset packages you can find too inside of Unity.
Yeah, typical story. So we get asked this question all the time, so that's pretty cool to hear. Okay, awesome. So 2D, Molly, the 2D course is being updated rapidly, so Rick is on that. Is he producing it fast enough for you, Brian? Bindi, is it coming through at a reasonable pace?
I have a ridiculous amount of free time, so I'm always going to consume it almost immediately when it's out. I just noticed it was there today, and I'm almost done with the 7 or so videos that were added.
Oh, wow, good job. So you are all over the content. Cool. I've just stepped briefly out of the frame just to grab something from the other side of the room. I will be back.
But yeah, honestly, I don't see having anything that needs to be looked at for a month or so at least.
No worries. We'll store it up, Bindi, and when you're ready, we'll be ready to help you. I think we've got a second victim on the line, Bryant. How are you doing, Brian? Are you able to speak?
Sure. Can you hear me fine?
Yeah, I can. Cool. All right, James. Well, look, if that's it for this one, I won't keep trying to extract information from you because that seems mean. So if you stop sharing your screen, you're welcome to stay here in voice. If you have any other questions, you're welcome to interject. But I'll switch over to Brian at the 20-minute point and see how we can help. Firstly, Brian, thank you for being a Tier 3 subscriber. That's hugely appreciated. And hopefully we can help you out.
Sure. So I'll share my screen. I can't really say at this point I have a lot of great questions, just kind of getting started out. Let me just share my desktop. Easier. Okay. So we're looking at Godot probably.
Just going to
Perfect.
Oh, no. So, Brian, you've got kids as well, right?
I have kids and a puppy. And the puppy's
we all have
right
kids.
now.
That's cool. So if you could do me a couple of favors to help the screen share go better, if you wouldn't mind, I don't know how much of a pain it will be for you not to be able to see the chat, but I don't want people to have the chat in two, potentially three places, because some people have got the chat alongside the video, then they've got my chat, and then they've got yours. That's awesome. If you can maximize your window, but also possibly squeeze the font size up a couple of points. I think it's hold down Control and roll the mouse wheel on a PC. That will help a lot, and maybe even close the bottom bar if you don't need it, as in this bit here.
It's just dual bars.
It's just that bottom one that we don't really need.
Let's drag it down.
This guy here.
Oh, you want to get rid of that guy?
Yeah, that's cool. Just to give people the screen real estate they deserve. And then finally, would you like to show us your face, or would you rather not show us your face?
I don't have a camera set up at the moment.
I thought you were going to say you don't have a face for a minute. I was going to say,
wow.
wow, that's pretty unique. No, that's cool. There's no problem. I always just like to offer because that's an opportunity you have.
Nope.
So go
Kids are
ahead.
supposed to be at school today, but they're not.
Awesome. So good to have you on. How can I help?
Thank you. Well, as I said, I mean, I just got started out with kind of creating my own idea of a game, so I don't really have a lot going on at the moment. More than anything, it's kind of a base. I'll call it a Clash of Clans kind of clone. It seemed like an easier starting point, I guess, more than anything else. So I'm just getting the initial screen kind of built out and the map laid out. It's kind of where I'm at the moment. I mean,
What's your background? Or how much game development or other development have you done before?
You know, on and off, I've done some Visual Basic years ago. So my background is basically more in IT, so network hardware side, and then some programming, but then, you know, on a very light scale. So really the only formal classes, I'll call it, is what I've learned from you, which has been great. I've actually wrote some other just standard C# applications that interface with our phone system, you know, things like that, kind of going through your courses and learning. So that's been a huge help. Not that I want to do, you know, business line of apps in the long run, but, you know, it's nice to see the knowledge transfer.
Absolutely. Oh, it's good to hear that the knowledge does transfer. That is our idea. It's, you know, learn to code the fun way by making games. And if you can transfer the knowledge, that's even more awesome. So cool. Cool. So Clash of Clans is not that simple, actually. It's how much of Clash of Clans are you going to try and replicate? That would be my question.
I would say, from a very basic point, would be just the general gameplay on the map, not the world, not the multiplayer, unless I flesh this game out to a point that, I want to take it to that next level. More just that moment, more of a game moment than actually trying to recreate it. So, from a very basic level, if I even run what I have now, it's gonna load. There we go. So
don't worry about the kids. We're all pretty forgiving of kids here. I think practically everybody watching this stream either is a kid or has kids.
As soon as you get on the phone, they don't stop talking.
Yeah. Because they want your attention and it's somewhere else. It's one of these laws of nature.
Yep. So I've started out with a basic build map that I can kind of move around. The camera's been a little bit of a challenge more than anything to kind of give the camera the feel that I want. But I can build, if I remember how I was building. I should be able to build objects with pushing B.
Oh, cool.
And I built up just a couple simple that I can kind of scroll through and have them tile accordingly. So
nice, yeah.
Go play with your sister. That would be kind of where I'm at now. So the original, I guess, intent was, my game idea more than anything else. Hold on one second.
No worries. We all have challenges with kids occasionally. It's bless them. I guess it's not that natural for kids to be waiting for us to finish on a computer. So, how do I get myself showing? I don't know. Who cares? You guys don't.
They fight like cats and dogs. So the original thought was more of a different kind of twist on Clash of Clans. It's actually why I went with the 3D environment. My plan was more of a I would say a dungeon tomb, actually, is what it's. The original game title was going to be Tiny Tombs. And build like your little pyramid tomb, and then when someone else went to kind of play against you, they would actually play it from a first-person perspective as themselves. So the 3D environment seemed to kind of lend itself better to that than trying to 2D map it and then create a 3D map during gameplay. Okay,
cool. Maybe show us a little bit of your code. Let's have a look at that
Sure.
side of it, if that's all right. Cool. All right. So.
Okay. So here is so as a lot of my code is pretty messy. Oh, I got the class view.
No, it's not looking. At first glance, it's not looking messy.
No, it's more. I think when let's get back to the basics. It's not horrible until I get down to some. I'm trying to, like, for example, to build different objects, I just kind of mapped a few different inputs down here to, well, where did I put that? No, that's the level manager. So the level manager, what does the level manager have in it? Some code for the panning and zooming on the camera, it looks like, maybe.
In the chat, by the way, guys, just as a challenge to you, if you see anything that you think Brian could improve on his code, let us know, and we'll see if we can make the suggestions. So, or any queries you have about his code.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I don't remember what the camera stuff is for. I don't even know if that's used anymore. Although,
so to find out, double-click on the symbol in question, and then you'll see if it has any references within this.
I'm in the camera movement script. That's why I'm looking at it funny. I thought I was on the level manager on the right.
Yeah, so if you double click that turn speed, it'll show you whether you're using it. If you're not, then there is one risk here. You are using it there, but there's a risk, which is that they're public. And because they're public, even though you may not be using them in this file, but another file could use them effectively like a global variable. because anything can reach in and grab this. So I would urge you to make those things serialized field if they're tuning parameters, which they look like they are,
Yep.
or just private if they're not.
I think actually, and this would be, I don't even know if I'm really leveraging this file, because I actually wind up just buying a cheap asset for the camera that I wanted, because I just couldn't get the camera to play the way I wanted it to. So I was trying to make a camera that I could zoom in and out on, and then use the mouse to kind of look left and right and kind of get that right feel. But then the rotations, on the camera started happening, and it all kind of went sideways from there.
Yeah, the other thing I would question is whether you want to be caching these states of the camera or not. So you're keeping a copy of what you're trying to keep track of, whether they're rotating, panning, or zooming. I would consider making more judicious use of button down, button up, etc., and relying on that rather than necessarily caching it. If you can, have a think about not during this call, but have a think about if you could not keep having to change these booleans as to whether it's panning, rotating, etc., because you can work out whether you're panning, rotating, etc., just by looking at how the camera was last frame and how it is this frame and what the difference is. So
sure, that makes sense. I don't know
another
if I'm
consideration
even using this camera script. That would be the next question. I might not even be leveraging that script in Unity.
Okay, so to find out, you go into your scripts. Go to the script.
Sure.
In your scripts and your asset browser in Unity. Sorry, to be clear. In here, probably, presumably.
Yep, it is. Yep.
And then right-click on it, and then say Find References in Scene.
That's right.
Which is halfway down. And in this scene, you're not using that script. You're quite right.
Yeah, that would make sense. Okay, yeah. I think that was the original script that I was working on, and it just wasn't right. So that's when I went and got another one to kind of move the ball forward a little bit.
So if you're using version control, are you using version control yet?
I've been playing around with the Unity, the collaborate feature, which so far so good. It seems to work fine for what I need it for. I haven't set up Git yet.
So if you're using some form of version control, even if it's only zipping up your folders, then it's at this stage that if you're not using Move Camera, I'd urge you to consider just deleting it, boldly deleting it, because as your project gets bigger, that sort of stuff is going to get more and more confusing. Because right now, for instance, you've got a script that you're not using and it's got public variables in it. So in the heat of coding, you could come in here and go, move camera dot something or other, and you'd be writing into a variable in a script you're not using. So basically, if you've got version control, you've not really deleted it. You've just kind of put it to one side for now. You can get it back if you ever need it, but the less is better in general. So that's good.
That makes perfect sense.
I'm just going to keep an eye on the chat. Give me 2 seconds because I full screened you so that people don't get too much distraction. But that means I need to keep an eye on the chat elsewhere, which I'm just doing now. Have you heard of the Mighty Quest?
I have
the Mighty Quest for Epic Loot. Dan Joe's saying that looks like that's the sort of game you're trying to make.
Well, it's certainly possible. Never heard of it.
Okay,
but
cool.
Same idea, maybe. Then yeah, I have.
Cool. All right, I'm caught up on the chat. So, awesome. Looks good. So one thing I would say here to make your life easier is you're now indented a lot of levels deep, and that can be quite hard to reason about. So I would suggest that a method does as few things as possible. So certainly you'd want to be extracting this block out into a separate method and possibly more. Because by the way, there's a mistake in the indentation already. And because there's so many levels of indentation, it's easy to miss. This should be indented one more, all of this, if you see. Or just those bits there. Because there you can see the line 28, 29 are not indented in the right place.
Yep, I can see that.
You can see that now. So basically it's too indented. It's doing too much. So you can try the extract method function on all of this stuff from lines 31 to 57, I think, or 56. And see if you can extract that. So just highlight it all. So I think it's
all right.
Is that it, or is there one more? It's one more. Close one more line down.
Yep, one more line down. So I know, Lexi.
And then right-click into that.
Yeah.
and try extract method, quick actions and refactorings.
Yeah, extract
Method. What do you get? Do you get a nasty? No, that's okay. You're doing a raycast. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, that should be fine.
You're not using that hit though, which is interesting. In the top level method now, you're not using the hit, but that's otherwise it's okay. What is this doing? It's just, you could just call it.
This was what was this one doing? This was basically checking to see what I hit and if I could build. I think basically that's what I was saying. Some of this was just kind of get a functional thing happening to see it before it was refactored. So yeah, this checks to see if it's a building that I'm hitting, which is one of those shapes, or the ground. And if it's the ground, then it instantiates one of the buildings off of an index.
Yeah, it's build on free slot or something like that might be a good name for the method. Or whatever you want to call it, but it's doing something like that. It's build if free or build on free slot.
Yeah, that's probably better actually.
Build on open ground or whatever it is, yeah?
Well,
okay,
in the future.
That's cool. Now, the other thing about this, which is interesting now we've done the extraction, is you don't actually need, at the moment, you don't need this hit. You're not using it, right? Because this bit of code that we've just extracted actually does the work. So you don't need to keep the hit coming back, and therefore you don't need a hit local variable. Does that make sense? You're just not using it. You can see that we could get rid of line 28 and the beginning of line 31.
And then just call the function itself?
Yeah, because you're producing an array that's the raycast that you're doing, but you're not actually using the hit result.
That makes sense.
There you go. Now that method above is a lot easier to reason about what it's doing. Now we can see in one fell swoop, if you scroll up just 2 more lines, now we can see in one fell swoop what update is doing. If you hit alpha 0, then I'm not entirely sure what saying build index equals 0 does.
That just that does nothing more than there's the buildables array in Unity that basically just has the 2 free prefabs loaded into it.
Okay.
Not the ideal way to do it in the long run. It was just an easy way to get it out there. Eventually, you kind of have to have.
No, that's cool. By the way, you want to return in here before the else if you want to be consistent with your
yeah, I do.
Minor, but it helps you parse it. Okay, so you hit 0, you set the build index to 0. You hit 1, you set the build index to 1. If you hit B, then you go and build on a free slot. That's cool. Now that's really clear. Now let's save that, make sure it still works, because I hate to help people refactor their code and then break it in the process.
Yep. So, whoops. Oh, whatever. Still building. There we go. And then, yep.
So in the chat, we've got people saying you sound like Penn Jillette. I don't know if you know Penn Jillette, but maybe that's not why you're not showing your face. Maybe you are him.
No.
Kids are keen for something today by the sounds of it.
See, can you help her?
This is my life through and through. I'm trying to get some work done here. Can't you look after the kids?
The dogs take her toys every 3 seconds.
Yeah. There's always, if there's 2 kids, the kids will take each other's toys. A kid and a dog, the dog will take the kid's toys. It's just the test that we have laid ourselves down for by being parents, hey? So is this still working?
Yeah, I'm building just fine. Oh, I have to hit the B key. So,
awesome. And is the code a little bit clearer to read now?
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely agree. As I said, I hadn't had a chance to kind of really even do any form of refactoring on some of this. It was just kind of fitted in, and then the last 4 days I haven't touched my code, so I haven't. And that was kind of the intentive plan before we even got here to kind of refactor it a little bit. But no, it's great to do it online as well.
Exactly. That's cool. So just kind of do it as you go. That's cool. Have you got any other code questions or any editor side questions or any other general questions?
You know, not at the moment. You know, as I said, this is kind of really the ground floor kind of the game. So, you know, it's one of the a million different concepts I always have running through my head, it feels like. So right now,
what am I going to say about that, Bryant? You've been on enough streams. What am I going to say about that there?
Geesh.
What am I going to call it?
You're going to say it's a magic number, probably.
Aha.
Yeah.
So do you understand why we don't like magic numbers? Does it make? Do you think it's just like a quirk, some pretty strange English guy's quirk, or do you understand why we might want to extract magic numbers? There's 2 or 3 good reasons why, actually.
No, yeah, absolutely. No, I completely do. Yeah, it would make a lot more sense to be able to just put it in as a private variable or a public variable that could be modified and understand what it does instead of just a magic 100F. Makes
exactly. That's the real key. Just be honest that you've got a tuning parameter there. What I think you'll find it is the raycast distance. It is the maximum distance that raycast will go to.
Right. Yeah.
Often then that leads to a secondary question, which is, could that be calculated from some property of the world and the camera, for instance? Probably doesn't matter here, but if you start finding that you have a game where the camera moves a lot and the world scale changes a lot, you're probably going to have to keep changing that number. And you either make it big enough for the biggest case, which can be slow and wasteful, or you could calculate that number. But by taking it upstairs, you can start to think about it being, in the first instance, it could be a parameter, and then it could also be a method call, remember. Thank you, honey. If it really changes very, very often, it could be a method call straight in here. It could literally be, get max raycast or something. And it could just be a straight method call, which immediately returns that distance.
No, that makes sense, absolutely.
Few different options for you.
Yep. Nope, that makes sense. Yeah, this was, originally intended, obviously, just to kind of fit within this, which, can only max zoom out, a very fixed amount. So
it all looks really good. I'm just trying to make some general comments.
Yep. Nope. I agree. I don't think I have anything. I'll check the level manager.
Now, level manager is our fault. We're starting to move away a little bit from the word manager because it doesn't really tell you what it does.
Sure.
A level loader, perhaps, or just level is another way of thinking about naming those things. So there's just a thought for you. I know that Unity's doing it, so they're setting a precedent here with scene management. Doesn't really help us. And level manager is okay, but we don't know really what about the levels it manages. It's probably better that it's... the problem with level manager is it's 2 nouns, basically. And therefore, it doesn't really tell you what it does. So that's cool, fine.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, I just kind of imported this one directly just to give it a name.
Yeah, I wrote that script, so it's I'm just making general comments about manager.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And it works. I think I copied it at one point, and maybe it wasn't this one. Oh, I think it was this. The scene management has changed a bit. So
it's all changed a lot in Unity recently. And what do we got under ground.cs, Brian?
Ground.cs. This one did give me a goofy behavior. Initially.
Molly's suggesting scene loader.
It instantiates the ground when the level loads. So I need to get out of this view.
Okay, and you're doing that rather than just having it in the scene file for what reason?
Well, let me go back to the scene file. Let's take a look.
You've got a couple of magic numbers here, by the way. These aren't. These are okay because 2 is often just multiplying or dividing by 2 or whatever. We let those slide. Those 50s, I'm presuming that you're saying it's a 50 by 50 tile world?
It is, yep. And initially the intent was not to make it bigger or configurable. That was in the long run, I could see that for other game ideas that I have, but if I try instantiating a 250 by 250 world, it becomes really slow to load that up. So there has to be a better way of instantiating large terrains where I'm only loading the part that's, visible on screen. And then that would come more like if I kind of wanted to build like a sim or something like that, people moving around and doing things off screen would have to be dealt with a little bit differently.
So you could still come here and just say const int
Yep.
world
That's fine.
size in capitals with an underscore equals 50.
Yep.
And then you just put world size in there. And then it would just, grid size or world grids or something like that. It'd be constant, it'd be just as quick as this, and it would just mean you're being very clear about this, the world size. Okay, cool. So this all looks good. The other thing I would suggest is trying to avoid I's and J's. I know it's a kind of programming conventions from the old days, but that's when people didn't like typing. These days we have an IDE that finishes words off for you. So I would say be clear on which is the rows and which is the columns, or which is the northings and the latitude or longitude, or on whatever you're doing in this world, because later it's going to get confusing if you build on this at all. So maybe rename your I's to, I don't know, what could it be in your world? It's probably the equivalent of latitude.
Like a grid X, or yeah, exactly.
Or grid X, or whatever, and then your J's to something else. And then, at the end of the day, as you start to type the word latitude with a small L, it will autocomplete or fill it out for you. It doesn't really take any more typing. It just makes row or column is good enough as well. If you decide that your game world is consistent of rows and columns, then just use the word row and column. And particularly when you do row and column iterations, it just gets clearer later on.
Nope, that makes sense of that. Absolutely.
So for instance, if your I and your J here, because you've got your I's and your J's are equal, you wouldn't spot if you accidentally put the wrong thing here and here. You wouldn't spot you're building your world in the wrong order or whatever, because it would look the same because it's a square. But you would spot it if you gave them names that made that stick out like a sore thumb, which means later if you decide to go for a rectangular world, that you may just avoid some bugs. Cool.
Nope, that makes sense. Yep.
And what's this editor ground puppy doing?
Nothing at the moment, because I couldn't get. So originally I wanted, when I was in here, to be able to see a ground plane of some form, which I can get out of this view of finding references now that I'm in here.
Huh. Now, what you need to do is just click here.
Oh, there we go. That makes sense. Okay, cool. So this ground plane, which is just one single plane, it gave me a base point to kind of see, when I was scaling cubes and so forth, how they looked against the terrain, because I don't instantiate a terrain until on load. But for some reason, and maybe it's working now, was that when I ran it, I wanted that terrain to disappear. Oh, it is now, and it wasn't. So that's what that was supposed to do. But maybe
so the sort of things to look into, I won't go into the technical solution here, but the two things to look into if you haven't seen them already. One is the execute, this is doubling up on my screen. One is the execute in edit mode attribute that you can put above a class, which allows you code to run in edit mode. And the other thing to think about is gizmos, on-draw gizmos, and the idea of using gizmos in the editor. So they're the two things maybe to explore that might help you here. So you could put if you want something to run at edit time, you put execute in edit mode up here above the class. And then look up on Unity's docs what that does. And the other thing you want to look at is the on-draw gizmos. Both of those can help you to think about functionality and visualizing things and doing things inside the editor.
I guess I was muted. I tried the execute in editor mode, but it wouldn't draw the plane. And then that's kind of when I came up with this method of behavior instead. For some reason, it just wouldn't ever destroy it. That's why I even had to put in the debug line here, was the destroying this to make sure that it was at least running this on start or on in the editor. It was on awake or whatever, and then it was running it, but it wouldn't destroy it for whatever reason, and I couldn't figure out why it wasn't destroying it.
Awesome. Is it giving you the desired behavior now, I guess, is the main question.
Yeah, through whatever I made changes to. So now I have an editor ground that has the script on it, and then when I hit start, yeah, it disappears.
Okay, cool. And my next question would be, what will you, because we're nearing the end of your session, what will you have for us next week, Brian? What do you want to have achieved for next week that we can all help you to get to?
I think for next week, I would like to, even if it's just importing Ethan in here and have him be able to kind of walk around within the world and move a little bit, would be just kind of helpful to visualize the map scaling and size, and then clean up kind of how I do the build system right now with the B. I'd rather it be with a mouse click instead. Eventually, the idea is to kind of go more of like a mobile platform, but that's a ways down the list.
Okay.
But that being said, to be able to kind of have like a bar at the bottom where I could choose what I want to build and then have it instantiate kind of like a Sim City or whatever would have instead.
Nice. So the RPG will tell you a little bit about that type of stuff.
Yep,
how to
going through that as well.
pick from a menu. And the other thing to say is consider using the cross-platform input manager, so that instead of going input dot, you're importing the right namespace. Not sure what it is in Unity 2018. You can soon look it up, and do cross-platform input, because that way you'll not have to change your code too much when you go to mobile.
Yeah, and that's kind of where actually when I got this asset, it already, I believe, is set up for that. I just haven't had a chance to even dig into its code to figure out why it wasn't working for me.
Awesome. Good job, mate.
But,
okay, so I think we'll have to end for this part of your session.
Sure.
And then I'll switch over to taking some general questions. It's been great to have you on. Thank you very much for turning up. Hope to see you next week.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we'll see you on the next one.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you very much for being here. Okay, guys. So we are kid-free now and ready to crack on. I'm just going to take a few general questions now in my very laggy way. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to end this Zoom meeting, and I'm going to bring my face up a different way, which is going to be much more efficient, because then you'll actually get a frame rate to speak of rather than this abomination here. Okay, there you go. How's that? Awesome. So, any questions? That's the question is, are there any questions? Hey, Tasty Graph, great to have you here. Hey, Molly, great to have you here. It's great to have all of you here, basically. You're all awesome. Remember to renew your Twitch Prime subscriptions. Wow, I'm bright. Let me sort that out. God, it's good to be bright, but maybe not that bright. I could do with reconfiguring some buttons on this camera. I wonder if, hang on, let me just try something. No, it is not configured like that at all. Okay, so I need to reconfigure some buttons. I think I'm going to change that wheel on the front to being the exposure override. If you can, it's very limited what you can do. Anyway, I'm going to give you guys about another 10 minutes to answer questions, and then I will crack on with the rest of the evening and go from there. So, what do you think? What's come into your mind since working with both those guys? It was awesome. We had 2 people on tonight to Meet the Mentors. Remember, if you want to be on the Meet the Mentors, you have to be a Tier 3 subscriber. Very easy to upgrade. There's some debate about whether Amazon will pay your first $5, your base subscription, and then you can update. I think at the moment the consensus is you probably can't, and that you have to just pay for all of it. But I'm going to speak to Twitch about that tomorrow. Very self-conscious about this collar. I like these polo shirts, but then these collars get a little bit crazy. So anyway, I'm going to kind of stretch and move a little bit while I wait for the questions to come out, because I've been standing still too long. So I'm going to do some circles. You're welcome to join me. I'm not going to force or ask you to join me this time, though. This is my neck. Oh, that's disgusting. Okay, that's cool. We have a new looking name in here. I've never seen you before. Mary Mao. Are you working on other tutorials or lessons? Absolutely. That is our list of current courses, and there'll be a couple more hitting that catalogue very shortly, mainly the Godot course, which is about to come out. Molly, would you recommend revisiting the remastered Block Breaker after Rick updates? I completed it recently with the older version. It looks like it's slightly different. I don't really miss any C# learnings. I don't think you'll learn any new C#. You'll learn a little bit more about game design. You'll learn a little bit more about Unity's editor. You'll learn a tiny bit about the differences with Unity 2018. But I think in your case, it depends on whether you've consumed the rest of our Unity content. If you haven't consumed the rest of our Unity content, consider doing that first. And also consider, if you haven't already explored either Unreal or Godot, have a little look at those if you have completed the Unity content, because they will give you a lot more perspective. If you've done all of that, then yeah, maybe that would be your final bonus. Or go and take somebody else's tutorial. But I probably wouldn't right now unless you have a very good reason to. Keel Block is saying, can you ask a general RPG course question? Absolutely, no problem. This is just a quick question session at the end here. I'll be going for the next 8 minutes. So the Godot course will be like next week, I believe, Grasshopper. We are nearly there. It's got lots of content in it. It's doing really well now. Lots of people have already got it. It's great. Jan's really making a great job of it. So I think we launch it next week. It was going to be this week, but we've just got to get the promo video done and a few other bits done. So yeah, next week. It's a really good course. Jan's kicking it out the ballpark, so that's cool. Wow, the chat's going fast now. Yeah, so thank you, Tasty Graph, for your input there. Thank you for everybody for subscribing. Thank you to those people who have subscribed at Tier 2. That mainly just supports us at a higher level. Also gets you an outlink to your Twitch channel, which is pretty cool. The exposure on this camera is all over the place this evening. So I will play with that a little bit, and we're trying to keep up with the chat. What are your thoughts on the Unity subscription? Seem pricey. Yeah, the thing about them to watch out for is that when you finish creating your game, that make sure you think about the things that you embed into your game, because they're the things that are going to end up costing you a lot of money ongoing. Now, a lot of those are really valuable, like the analytics and collaborate and things like that. But just be careful think about if your team scaled up to a few people, then you're paying $125 a month per user or whatever. If you're then adding on subscriptions and your game's out there and it's not doing so well, you could end up paying a lot long term. So I think that they deserve every penny for anything that you do during the development of your game, because it's a great tool. Just be careful you don't stifle yourself in the long run, because you might end up in a situation where you're cheaper off just paying Unreal 5%. So just take each facility one at a time and ask whether you really need those things. So the specific things you talked about, the default splash screen. Yeah, I mean, new gamers will forgive a Unity splash screen. Quite a few games have those. It's not going to make or break your game. I would get it making some revenue first. And dark mode, well, only if it drives you nuts, right? You can roll your own camera and movement script, key or block, no problem at all. I'm pretty sure that you will be able to see how to integrate that in the future parts of the course. Yeah, Horrocks. So Horrocks. That's a really cool name. Our most intermediate stuff is move over to the light side, the dark side, whatever you want to call it, Unreal, and look at the multiplayer course and the VR course in Unreal, even if you don't have VR equipment. That is the most advanced stuff we have. Unreal Multiplayer, Unreal VR, and of course the Unity RPG. They would be the most advanced things that we have at the moment. Of course, the brand new lighting course with Wilma as well. If you want to go slightly down a technical lighting track rather than a programming track, that's more. That is more not multiplayer. I'm getting distracted by that. That is more intermediate. So multiplayer, Grasshopper, Whopper even. Thanks for asking. We have Unreal multiplayer, but Unity multiplayer is not yet, and Godot multiplayer we haven't committed to as part of the Kickstarter, but if people pull on it and ask for it, and after the main Godot course finished by the end of this year, then certainly we'd be interested in looking at that for both Unity and Godot. I know that we're overdue doing Unity multiplayer, and it's just a bit more advanced, so it won't be until next year. But I'm really pretty confident that I'm very sure that in 2020 we'll be covering multiplayer on both of those. But next year, maybe. I can't be sure right now. We've got to make sure we make the right moves over the coming years. Udemy are changing a little bit. Our revenues are a little bit down. We've got to make sure we address the right audiences whilst keeping you guys who want more content happy. Bit of a balance for us. We want to make sure we're in this for the long run. We want to be here in 5 years, continuing to give you the best stuff, continuing to remaster our old courses. So bear with us through that, and we will get there. We definitely want to teach multiplayer. Wow, there's a lot of busyness in the chat. Game. Go check out the Unreal VR course. I really do suggest that. To the cost of our courses, even if you don't take a lot of it. Oh, wrong one. No, it's the right URL. That's the right URL. Sam goes through this, but movement is a huge difference, right? You can't move in the same way in VR because it makes you feel sick and it's just weird. So movement's a huge part of it. And another thing I would say is a huge part of it is you've got a huge amount of UI space in VR. In a game like Lunar Lander, which is a great VR game, if you play Lunar Lander, even on a big monitor, all your controls are kind of crammed on the screen and you're still looking through a little letterbox to fly the ship. In VR, you've got these huge buttons. They're like, they're palm-sized buttons. And despite being that big, they're really spread out because they're over here and here and here. So if you think about the amount of visual area you've got in VR when you can look around, especially in a cockpit simulator, that's game-changing. You can put a real number of buttons and things all on the screen all at the same time, which you really can't do outside VR. So more UI space, much more UI space if you make good use of it. But be careful about the movement paradigm. It's still basically best as a sitting simulator. Is the very best application for VR at the moment, the most natural. Anything where you're in a cockpit or a car or anything like that. Of course you can move around, but it's just, you either have to warp or you do something nauseous. So there's an overview. Did that answer your question? Yeah, Google Cloud partnership with Unity will make multiplayer even cooler, so that'll be a great thing to dive into. Thank you for saying that you like our community. I like our community even more than you do. However much you guys like the community, I like you guys more. So ISO hex turn-based for Godot, can we expect it, or is it just a rumor? For that, you need to keep an eye on the Godot Trello syllabus. Now, I don't know where that is. I'll just go and have a quick look. This is a different one. Give me just a second. I'll try and pull it up for you. All our syllabus is on here. Here you go. So have a good look through that. Columns are sections, and then cards are topic areas, and speak to Jan on that board. And I think there's a good possibility. It's not going to be the next project after Heistmeisters, which is a cool, sneaky, nighttime kind of secret agent 2D game, but it's possible we're doing hex grid-based later. So, yes, I think I've got most of the questions, and there's a bit of a lull in the chat, so I think I'm going to leverage that lull and start to say goodbye to you guys. Otherwise, otherwise I'll be here all day, and I want to get some different work done. Loving Twitch as I am. Do need you to support us on Twitch for us to continue doing it. We will not and cannot do it forever if you guys don't support us. So everybody's here supporting us fantastically well, but we need you to keep doing that in order for us to keep doing it. We basically need to see growth. If we're seeing continual growth on the channel, then we will continue to support the channel. So let me just bring up our events board and have a look. What I want to tell you is when the next Meet the Mentors will be. It is in the diary. It's later than usual. It's 8:30 p.m. next week. So it is 2.5 hours later next week. The next stream overall will be talking about GDScript for C# developers at 8 p.m. tomorrow here, and then immediately followed by us making fools of ourselves in Human Fall Flat, which looks fun. So as usual, we've got a great lineup here on Twitch, which is awesome. Thank you for being subscribers. It really helps. Remember to consider upgrading to tier 2. Costs you a little bit of extra money, but it really helps us. We get 240% more money from it. You get to link out to your channel from our channel, which is becoming increasingly busy. So that means that underneath here, I'll just show you on the homepage, you get a link out to your Twitch channel automatically, like Scorpion and Perceptual Lucidity and Avi. They've all got links out to their Twitch channels. And you get a various other warm smileys, warm fuzzies like your custom tier 2 emote and priority in the chat and that sort of thing. So that's that. If you want to be on Meet the Mentors, subscribe at tier 3. Otherwise, thank you for being here. Remember to use your Twitch Prime subscriptions. Remember to renew your Twitch Prime subscriptions. They will not auto-renew. Don't know what else to say, really. I'm getting used to the shorter hair. It's been a while coming, but I'm actually starting to like it now. It took a long time. I'm like, who's that weirdo in the mirror? But so much easier to deal with than long hair. You know, Sam came here the other day and he's like, I can't go swimming because I'd have to blow dry my hair. I thought, wow, I'm glad I don't have that problem. Of course, whatever you put effort into looks great. So, you know, a polished Ferrari looks better than a rusty old Ford. So Sam's hair looks better than mine because he puts a lot more effort into it. So, you know, pros and cons. But I'm quite enjoying not having to put effort into it. Anyway, that's it. Thank you for having us, or me here, and we'll see you on the next stream, and keep being an awesome community. And yeah, and now let's get this emotes board going, by the way, this cheer board. So in order to cheer, you need to use tiny like cents, tiny microtransactions, and then you get to cheer and you get to compete on who cheers the most and creates the most hype. Hype is a cool thing. I'll tell you a quick story just before I go. At Udemy Live, there were 2 simultaneous sessions going on in San Francisco a few days ago. One was a panel with 3 of the biggest instructors on Udemy, Rob Percival, Kirill, and one other. And another was me on my own for 45 minutes talking about content strategy. And as people walked down the corridor, they had a choice to go into one of 2 rooms, and I wanted to make sure our room was full. So I did 2 things. Firstly, I got the room to just cheer for no reason whatsoever. I'm like, guys, for 20 seconds, I just want you to raise the roof about absolutely nothing. That's hype. Very important with your games to create hype. People will come just because something's going on. And the other thing I did to make sure we filled the room is I asked everybody to leave the room. I closed the doors and made them all queue up down the corridor. So they're all queuing up for an empty room. And that just means that when people look at that, they're going, oh, they're queuing up for something. And it was just a lesson in psychology and hype. So remember to sell your stuff. Whatever you're doing is valuable to somebody else. Remember to sell it and to let other people know it exists. You've got to just keep doing that. And unapologetically as well. When you know your stuff's good, then you need to ask people to engage. So, any new videos coming for Tilevania? We're going to rework Tilevania completely, but give us many weeks to do that, because Tilevania was basically rushed to an end because of the timings of Unity 2018 coming down. It was rushed to an end in 2017. We're now going to get the rest of the 2D course finished, and then we'll come back to Tilevania, but I'm not sure exactly when. It's basically finished. It's a little bit kind of rough around the edges, but we wanted to make sure we got into 2018 as quick as possible. Like your hype logo there, Molly, that's a lot of fun. Play with the emotes, guys. Click on both the emotes and the other emotes. We've got all sorts of fun stuff. I like this duck in particular, made by our community. I think duck, duck, I could do with a moose, couldn't we? Then we could have duck, duck, moose, although that might be a trademark violation. Anyway, I've digressed into complete waffle, so I'm going to reach forward and press the little red button and see you guys on the next one. Thank you for being here.